Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about some of the best helicopters available in Broken Arrow for the United States. Transport helicopters, attack helicopters, or what you could even consider recon helicopters in one way or another. In fact, one of the main roles of helicopters historically has been reconnaissance, getting information for troops on the ground, though of course that's been replaced by drones in the modern age. Still, helicopters do have a significant role because they do have better survivability than either jets or drones. Partly because drones are just flying at a certain altitude and they're very easy to detect and shoot down for all their advantages. Anyway, at number 5, we start with the Osprey. And it doesn't matter which one we're talking about, be it the CV-22B or the MV-22B, it's the same one, be it for the USMC or for Special Operation Forces. The value proposition of the Osprey is that it's a fast transport. If we look at the kind of speed that these helicopters do have, you can take a look at the forward speed of a lot of these things, and then you look at the Osprey, which has a 500 forward speed. Obviously not the best turn radius, that's a different discussion, but if you want to get in troops quick to a location or get supplies quick to a location, the Osprey is arguably the best choice that you do have as the Americans from that perspective of speed. And just being able to get things fast to the combat zone or close enough to the combat zone and it is in itself a good layer of protection and something not to be ignored. You can also install a minigun on it, but that's not really the value proposition over here with Osprey when we're thinking about it. It's also relatively cheap, all things considered, when we're looking at with respect to transport helicopters, especially when we're thinking about the kind of cargo capacity that this thing has as opposed to, say, a Chinook. Though, don't get me wrong, a Chinook has its own advantages because it has a lot more lift capacity, can transport more troops, but that just means you're putting all your eggs in one basket over there and you might be risking quite a bit with something like a Chinook. So that's at number 5. At number 4, we have the OH-58D Kiowa Warrior. Now, this is a recon helicopter, historically speaking. So it does represent that when we're looking at the range at which it can detect various things. And this is, of course, with the optronic system, so it can have a good detection system. But importantly, with the Kiowa Warrior, you do have the ability of installing Hellfire AT missiles on it. So not only do you have a better detection range capability than other helicopters, you also have the ability of shooting down different things. Like you can use it, for instance, with Stinger missiles to hunt down for enemy helicopters, which is, by the way, a very popular choice right now. Like a lot of people are using helicopters right now, because you can fly at that low altitude and be protected from a lot of air defense systems. So just having Stingers on your own helicopter is a good way of dealing with that. So that's one of the things. It's that recon capability. It's that AA capability. It's that anti-tank capability if you want to install on it. There's all kinds of discussions on what would be best with respect to it. Keep in mind, Stingers are going to be cheaper than Hellfires. I would not go with Hydro rockets, but I do think it's a good helicopter given the fact that it's cheap. Because here's the problem with a lot of helicopters in the game. Like, you look at something like an Apache, yeah, it can be a good helicopter. You start installing Hellfire missiles on an Apache, it's going to do a lot of damage. But the problem is cost. And also vulnerability, funnily enough, because yes, an Apache can have a good amount of detection as well. But again, you're looking at the kind of cost situation. I would much rather have a cheaper unit with a couple of missiles, because chances are your helicopters are not always going to be able to get those missiles off, regardless of its durability. So that's one of the advantages, as I personally see it, with the Kiowa Warrior. Then at number 3, we have the King Stallion. So the King Stallion is one of the best transport helicopters and the best transport helicopter for the United States. It obviously doesn't have the same level of speed as an Osprey. So that is one of the advantages that the Osprey does does have. By the way, one of the things I would like to point out with regards to Kiowa Warrior's stealth capability that's greater than something like an Apache, just not something to be ignored with regards to that. But with the King Stallion, it's just that huge capacity. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say again, you don't want to necessarily put all your eggs in one basket, because that can be a problem. But here's where things do change. With respect to the King Stallion, it's not the case of moving infantry or supplies, it's the case of moving armored vehicles. And this is quite important when you're considering that the Marines in particular have a lot of these vehicles that have anti-tank missiles on them, for instance. Or you can get a grenade launcher, you can get an air defense platform. Being able to move this through a helicopter behind enemy lines or close enough to your lines without having to have that vehicle move close enough. Like a transport plane is not really a great situation right now. Maybe in the future, meta is always evolving. But just being able to get a vehicle like that close to the front line with a lot less risk than either, the speed is obviously going to be much greater than moving it via the land, but it's going to have that kind of defensive capability that can only be provided by a helicopter, especially if you're switching the altitude. Sure, switching the altitude will reduce its speed, but even then, it's still faster than going by land. So that's the value over there with the King Stallion. And number 2 is the little bird, the AH-6 Killer Egg. This thing is absurdly good as a helicopter. First off, like the Kiowa Warrior, it does have a better stealth profile than many of the dedicated attack helicopters, which is one of the reasons I do like it. This thing is extremely cheap. So if you want to mass a lot of attack helicopters, small helicopters that can do hit and run attacks, this is one of your best bets. You have several choices. You do have a good arsenal of options over here, but you can use, think of it from this perspective. This thing can shoot down enemy helicopters that are much, much more expensive. Imagine an 80-point attack helicopter either escorting your big, heavy anti-tank helicopter. So if you want to go with some Guardians, Apache Guardians, or you want to go with Comanches or anything like that, sure. A Comanche can do a lot of damage, right? Because of that stealth profile, but it's also more expensive. So you can either use this to protect your attack helicopters, or you can use these as attack helicopters themselves. The Hellfires are the most expensive option, but 2 Hellfire per pod is going to be expensive. We can mix and match. But even at the most expensive, it is the cheapest, or one of the cheapest helicopters in the game. It's certainly the cheapest attack helicopter that can be used in an attack role in the game. And again, that small size, that stealth profile is going to help it out quite a bit. And then finally, at number 1, we do have the MH-60X Silent Hawk. The stealth Black Hawk helicopter, which may or may not actually look like this in real life. I don't think we've actually ever seen a real picture. We've had pictures shown on, but those aren't artistic impressions. Those are what people guess Silent Hawk would look like. We know they exist. We know these things exist because they were used in real life to go after OBL. But we don't know how these things will look. But yeah, huge advantage over here. Can't transport the most amount of infantry. Not the best speed, but that 2.5 stealth profile on a helicopter is just amazing. To give you an idea, I'm just going to show you something about stealth. This is an F-22 Raptor. It has a stealth profile of 1.75. And that's the best you can get with a jet. The Silent Hawk is one of the best stealth vehicles in the entire game. Flat out. There's a couple of things that do compare. You look at a Comanche, for instance, or you look at recon capability. You can have pretty good recon capability with the RQ-750. But in terms of pure stealth, these 2 vehicles are the best. Now, my issue with the Comanche, well, there's no issue with the Comanche. If you're playing Special Forces, you should probably get Comanche attack helicopters as opposed to Apache Guardians, sure, you know, arguments to be made, but like, let me just put it like this. This thing is a 400 point brick that is going to get destroyed. This is a 250 point 6 Hellfire missile helicopter. And these Comanches are very difficult to shoot down. But from my view, when we're thinking about like the Kiowa Warriors, when we're thinking about the Killer Eggs, the Osprey capability, I just think those are more useful. But certainly the Comanche is one that could argue deserves a place on this list. But yeah, from my perspective, Silent Hawks, just really great for transporting as much infantry as you can. If you want to move vehicles, you get a King Stallion or a Chinook maybe, though keep in mind, obviously, the Chinook is going to struggle more than a King Stallion. That's the difference. But if you want to transport heavier stuff, you bring a Chinook. If you want to transport stuff stealthily and your opponent might not realize it, which having that kind of initiative against an opponent can be pretty substantial. Like dropping in recon forces, I understand that it's kind of a niche situation, but you'd be surprised in how many games you can get away with dropping stuff, not necessarily directly behind enemy lines, certainly not on top of enemy artillery and anything like that, but just close enough that your infantry can then go in stealthily for forests and all that, and just either gain information from the enemy or from enemy positions, or you can bombard them with artillery, cruise missiles, etc., or just causing some level of damage behind enemy lines. It might not win matches on your own, especially if your team is asleep at the job, but it will help quite a bit, and that's that's the reason I'm putting the Silent Hawk at number 1. Christine signing out. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. Next up, we'll talk about artillery. I think it will be time to talk about it because it seems the meta is shaping up to really focus on the situation with artillery, and there's a huge discussion on that subject. Stay tuned.